I always, Ravi and I, we pick this apart every which way, but Sunday before, like for the month. And I felt like we kind of compared it to the draft going into this deal. And we prefaced the whole thing by saying, this time, I don't think the coaches are playing possum if, because this was way before spring started, if they don't have anything definitive coming out of spring on the quarterbacks. And you're going to get the collective eye roll from the fan base or angst, one of the two, right? Because I don't know if we trust them enough to go, oh, you mean it's really not declared? Because just what you said, it's football, but it's not taking guys to the ground. It's not these intricate blitz packages. It's not pressure packed 3rd and 7. And a lot of guys can flourish in these sorts of settings. And you also don't really know about quarterbacks until they actually play. So is it easier to see why they haven't been overly one way or another at the quarterback position and take them at their word?
Yeah, it's easy to see, and for me, there was clarity before the spring. I didn't expect that Nebraska was going to say 7 practices into March and April that Dylan Raiola has got the nod to start against UTEP. That that's not really the way to do it. It's not really the way to do it with a true freshman, and no matter what his name is, and certainly not the way that I expect Matt Rhule and Marcus Satterfield and Glenn Thomas to do it with a true freshman. Last year, the last couple of years, you can look back on it. And Nebraska's had quarterbacks who came in as mid-year transfers, Casey Thompson and Jeff Sims. And Thompson was named the starter before he ever took a snap in practice at Nebraska. Mark Whipple did that on the first day of media availability, and it might have been February, if not early March. And then it wasn't a whole lot different with Sims last year. When Sims signed with Nebraska in December of 2022, right after Matt Rhule was hired, it was apparent from Rhule's comments that he was likely the guy. Not to say that they named him the starter right then. And also, you can compare that situation to Dylan Raiola, and everybody but the coaches has said that he's going to be the starter, and said that from the day that he committed and signed with Nebraska. But that's a very different message than what you get out of Lincoln. And I think that's healthy. That's important. You need to have competition. He's not taking a snap of college football, and he needs to go out and do everything that it takes to win that job and show that he's capable of being the starter. And if he doesn't, then the whole Dylan Raiola experience maybe doesn't start on August 30th. Maybe it starts a couple weeks later. But I still expect that's going to be the case. I think that his talent is going to win him that job. But we've got to see it happen before we're ready to analyze and make predictions about how it will go.
We're talking with Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Mitch, DB and I talked a lot yesterday about how different, at least in DB's eyes and mine as well, that Daniel Kaelin has looked from high school to now in spring practice with Nebraska. Obviously, he struggled some last year, has looked really good in camps and other places, but probably didn't have the senior year he wanted to have. How much impact can just this short amount of time, I mean, he's been there a couple months really, have in terms of the coaching difference, whether it's just the learning styles or whatever it is for Daniel Kaelin? Like, how much impact can that have in such a short period of time? Because anecdotally, it appears to be dramatic.
Well, if he's playing extremely well and picking up the offense, hitting receivers the way that we saw in a very small window on Tuesday, if that's what he's doing the entire spring, and then he's also getting that done in the meeting room, and I know that Nebraska's happy with the way that he handled himself in the interview setting last week. Again, that's a small thing, but
wait,
it's part of being a quarterback.
Excuse me here, Mitch. I'm sorry, but is it so when you say that isolated? Yeah, that's kind of small. But could I convince you? And I'm not selling anybody. I'm just trying to put the growth and the development together in terms of the chain. How about if you go back to how he handled the whole
Mhm.
Dylan Raiola commitment versus coming back into the fold from Missouri and still continuing to champion
Mm.
Nebraska's recruiting class? That's a
Starts to
microcosm
become
of that's a microcosm of his personality too, right? Maybe he was showing us more about who he really was than we were really to give it credit for because we didn't love his senior year.
I think he showed us a lot going back a year ago. It was a year ago this time when the writing was on the wall. Well, even longer than a year ago. You're talking like February of 23 when there was writing on the wall that Raiola was serious about Nebraska, and Daniel didn't want to wait anymore, and he didn't burn any bridges. He handled things diplomatically. He committed to Mizzou. He said the right things. He handled that the right way. And then um and then later on, way down the road, when uh when Dylan committed to Georgia, actually you're into May at that point. Um he handled it very well again, and in how he switched his commitment from Missouri to Nebraska and immediately became the champion for Nebraska's recruiting efforts, and was, I think, the instigator in that June push for Nebraska to secure the vast majority of its class. He was on campus every weekend helping recruit offensive and defensive players. And yeah, I think that's all very much known and not forgotten by the Nebraska coaches. And then you fast forward to December and the way that he handled Raiola coming back surprisingly at the end. And, he took a couple days, Danny did, to think about things. But in the end, he came out of it looking very good. And now here he is in the spring, practicing well. So yeah, at that point, I do think, Damon, you're looking at a larger series of events than just one Tuesday in practice where he hit a couple passes. They're happy with Danny. They like what he's doing. Fact of the matter is, they like what Dylan's doing too, and they really like how he looks. And they've got an interesting situation. I don't even know if it's a situation, but it's an interesting dynamic and a comparison between the two. And I think at this point, and someday you probably won't be able to say this, but I think at this point, it couldn't have worked out any better with these two quarterbacks. We're only at April 11th, though, so there's a long way to go.
Mitch, it's interesting that you said that because I've been thinking a lot about the lack of quarterback competition we've had at Nebraska for the last 12 years almost. I mean, it pretty much went straight from Taylor Martinez to Tommy Armstrong to Adrian Martinez, all as long-term 3 to 4 year starters. And if I'm not misremembering, there was never really a guy that challenged.
It just depends on how you felt about the Jebbia Martinez thing, but considering Martinez was handpicked.
And then Jebbia bounced before the start of Adrian's freshman year.
Yeah.
I mean, there really hasn't been a competition seemingly to what we could be in store for. I mean, you kind of said this might have worked out better than anyone even planned. Is it possible that this ends up making both guys better? Because I think the lack of competition in the quarterback room has actually been a problem.
Well, we saw what happened between the freshman and sophomore year for Martinez, and he had to go back and kind of eat the body type change. And I mean, how few reps that he actually got live. Like, there's something to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a real competition in the spring, in Frost's first spring, with Tristan Jebbia and Martinez. Tristan, he transferred out like 2 days before the season started, so that played out, and Martinez won the job, and then the competition fizzled, and there was really never any more competition for Adrian the rest of his time at Nebraska. Which, yeah, I think you can make a case that wasn't great. It has been a long time. It would probably go back to Taylor Martinez redshirt freshman year when he somewhat surprisingly won the job in a battle with Zach Lee. But at that point, you think back to the way the previous year went with Zach Lee offensively, and you had a dynamic guy in Martinez. So anyway, that was a long time ago. I do think that these competitions, when they're real, that they do benefit everyone involved. they have the ability to benefit everyone involved. We'll see what this is. I don't think we even know what this is at this point, because right now the competition at really every spot in Nebraska camp is kind of baked into what they're doing. You see it with the spring league, you see it with the way that they structured mat drills and commitment week and everything that Nebraska, the way that it structures the offseason, they're just creating competition everywhere. But for it to be a true competition, I think you've got to have a couple of players or 3 players who are on somewhat equal footing with their ability and their talent. And, we'll see if that's what we're dealing with here. I think in August, it'll be more clear. Right now, throughout the spring, the way the spring game is going to be staged, I don't know that you're going to have a great sense of whether this is a competition or it's just an inevitability for Rhule to get named the starter.
Mitch, let's take quarterbacks out of it because we talk about quarterbacks all the time. So I want to kind of focus on some other position groups here. Is there a position group, maybe excited is the wrong word, but that you kind of look at the potential of and you kind of look at what they're bringing back and you say, that group could be really, really good?
Well, I'll give you 2. One that I expected to be really good, and then one that now I'm kind of looking at it and maybe reassessing. I'll start with that one, and it's the wide receivers. I think there's more there than what Nebraska had a year ago. Quite a bit, potentially quite a bit more. And that group was just blasted by injuries last year. But the way that Nebraska remade it, and I think we're going to look at Jamal Banks and Isaiah Nair in a few months and say that Nebraska went 2 for 2 in the transfer portal on that group. I think both of those guys are going to do good things for the Huskers in 2024. Not to say that like they're both all Big Ten or anything like that, but like they're going to be in the rotation at the top, close to the top of the rotation. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And I'm again seeing a small sample size here, but from what we've heard and seen on Banks and what we've seen now on Nair, I was impressed with him.
He's unbelievable
Tuesday.
right now.
Yeah,
I don't think you're far off at all.
Yeah, I think both those guys are going to do good things for Nebraska. And I think Barney is somebody who can play as a freshman. And Demetrius Bell, I've heard about a lot now. He's dinged up right now and wasn't practicing on Tuesday, but it's not a major injury. And he's electric with the ball in his hands. And then you've got the 4 guys. Well, he's one of them. The other 3 guys who were true freshmen a year ago. And Jalen Lloyd has taken his abilities and game to the next level. Malachi Coleman has the opportunity to do that when he gets back out.
We've had all these conversations about wide receivers, and Coleman hasn't even been. There's
a lot.
We haven't had to say any.
Jaden Doss can be somebody that really helps them. Alex Bullock can be a reliable guy and if you put him in a role where he's doing what he's best doing, then I think he helps your offense more than last year when they asked him to do more than what is his strength. So that's a group that I would say has kind of snuck up on me as having the possibility of being very good or better than expected in 24. And then the defensive line, which I knew going into camp was a strength of this team. I think it's the best position group on the team, just like the most fleshed out talent, size, experience. They've got a little bit of everything or a lot of everything in some cases.
That's Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Mitch, we appreciate you joining us bright and early this morning. Really good stuff there that I'm sure we'll dig into the rest of the show. Enjoy the rest of your day and your lovely little whiskey tasting room you got going on there. I love it.
Thank you. Thanks for making room for me, guys.
I appreciate you, Mitch. Thanks.
That's Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Coming up next, lots to dig into there, as well as
reset the show.
A lot else going on the show. That's DB. I'm Ravi. Lulla. We'll be back with more Hurrdat Sports Radio.